Our next presenter served as executive director of the Paseo Arts Association and as the Community Arts Program Director at the Arts Council of Oklahoma City. In her current position, she works with arts education and arts learning programs across the state, as well as overseeing the council's teaching artist roster and the Oklahoma Arts and the Military Initiative. She is a practicing visual artist working primarily in acrylic paint. Please welcome Jennifer Allen-Barron.
Hello. All right. As Cindy mentioned, I'm Jennifer Allen-Barron, and I'm the Arts Education Director at the Oklahoma Arts Council. Today I'm here to tell you a bit about how our agency planned and launched our Arts in the Military Initiative and share some lessons and strategies that we learned along the way. As we implemented this initiative, one of the threads that ran through our work was the idea of engaging military veterans as partners and arts leaders rather than simply as recipients of instruction. I hope that you will see this theme start to emerge throughout the presentation. First, let's go back in time a bit. Before we launched our pilot project, our agency distributed a survey in 2015 to assess the presence of arts programs serving military communities across the state. This was an important step for a couple of reasons. First, as a state arts agency, it's important for us to stay current with trends in the field. Second, by identifying resources, interests, and needs, the survey results could inform the steps that followed. The questionnaire went out to more than 4,600 individuals across the state. Those included representatives of arts and cultural organizations, social service nonprofits, colleges and universities, state, local, and tribal governments, and practicing artists, among others. A total of 400 individuals representing 86 cities and towns responded. Of those, only 15% were aware of current arts programs targeting military communities. The rest responded either that they were unaware of such programs or not sure, underscoring a significant delivery gap. From those who responded, community-based nonprofits were most likely to offer programs. These responses gave us a sense of who was already active in this work and where some gaps might be. Another piece of data that we had prior to the survey proved to be very significant for us. We already knew that Oklahoma has one of the highest per capita military populations in the country at 10% of our adult population. This led us to seek out the support and partnership of the Oklahoma Department of Veterans Affairs. When we went to the ODVA, we found a great champion for our work in General Miles Deering, who at that time was director of that agency. Securing the support of General Deering was crucial to the success of this project. Honestly, we weren't quite sure how our proposal was going to be received, but he and his agency offered his full support. A passionate advocate for veterans, General Deering was open to any ideas for innovative programming that could show clear, long-term benefits for veterans. In addition, ODVA also committed financial support to this effort, as did our other partner, Mid-America Arts Alliance. Yay. Without both of these generous partners, the project would not have been the success it was. We're very grateful that these entities believed enough in this idea to invest in it from the outset. Of the state's 7 long-term residential veteran centers, Norman was selected for our first pilot year. Due to its proximity to Oklahoma City and other resources, Norman is typically the site for ODVA to pilot new initiatives before disseminating them to the other state homes. Even before our artists arrived, the Norman Veterans Center was fortunate to have a number of existing assets, including an on-site activity director and an art teacher. There's also a large activity room and an art studio, as well as several acres of outdoor space. The center also offered a music and memory art therapy program. We wanted to offer residents the opportunity to interact with an art form that they did not already have access to, so we worked with a regional arts nonprofit, the Norman's Firehouse Art Center, to help identify instructors. We had already identified a creative writing instructor who I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. I wanted to take a quick moment to share an anecdote about Mike, the guy pictured on the right. Mike is a resident at the Norman Veterans Center, and he had once been an award-winning ice sculptor, although prior to our arts class, he hadn't practiced that art form in over a decade. After beginning the visual arts class, the center's recreation director shared with us that she had seen him once returning from a nearby Walmart, traveling down the sidewalk on his motorized chair, carrying a brand new chainsaw and a huge block of styrofoam. So I really love that story because I love it for a lot of reasons, but I love it because through this art program, we were able to connect this individual to something that he had really loved at one point. The pilot project took the shape of a series of hands-on classes held at the center. We offered 10-week classes in photography, creative writing, and painting. Of the site's 300 residents, more than 30 veterans participated in at least one of the 3 classes. Some participated in all 3, whereas others found 1 or 2 that resonated more. Photography proved to be a popular class at this site. Many of the residents already had their own cameras, ranging from simple point-and-shoots to more elaborate DSLR models. Visual arts was taught by a longtime educator with a stellar reputation within the Norman community. The artist that we hired to lead the creative writing class, Jason Poudrier, is also an Iraq War veteran. He's in the center on the far right image. He has found creative writing to be a powerful tool for himself in his own experience recovering from a traumatic brain injury, and he has discovered a drive to bring that process to other veterans. We built into the project several different methods for the veterans to share their work. Jason helped us edit and publish an anthology of creative writing, and he also helped arrange a few public readings. Douglas Elder, director of the Firehouse Art Center, offered his organization's gallery as an exhibition space, and we also held another exhibition at the Oklahoma State Capitol. These events allowed veterans to be featured as artists and share their creative work with families and peers. It also allowed our agency and ODVA the opportunity to share the successes of this project with the public. On the left, you'll see the cover of our published anthology containing the veterans' writing. A painting from the visual arts class is featured as cover art. In the center is an image from the Firehouse Gallery opening, and on the right is one of the photography images displayed at the exhibition. Months after this reception, the ODVA staff continues to comment on the positive impact of that event on the veterans. They felt that this was truly a one-of-a-kind experience for the center residents. From the outset, we had worked with the University of Oklahoma to document and evaluate the project. Another benefit of having the first pilot year in Norman was proximity to resources at the University of Oklahoma, the state's largest public university. Dr. David Moxley led this process. Some of the findings included the following. Quote, "The instructors would treat us as artists," end quote. This is a direct quote from one of the veterans' evaluations. Instructors presented lessons in a way that was framed more like a college class than like a community arts class for beginners. And evaluators found that residents responded positively to that approach. 2, resident-to-resident sharing. Sharing work among residents often led to sharing photo albums and other memories. Public readings and Jason's facilitated storytelling process of creative writing were great ways to engage participants in telling their own story. 3, consistency and investment of time. 4 weeks seemed to be a tipping point for residents in each art class. According to one instructor, quote, "It took 4 weeks for a participant to feel comfortable taking a creative risk," end quote. Keeping classes to 10 weeks enabled participants to build trust with each instructor and to build skills in their own work. After the completion of our first pilot year, ODVA and Mid-America Arts Alliance committed additional funding for a second pilot year at the Lawton Fort Sill Veterans Center. Here, we polled the residents beforehand about which artistic discipline they would most like to study. The top answer here was music. We hired Albert Greyeagle to lead the music class at the Lawton Fort Sill Center. He was a great choice for this project for several reasons. First, he's worked with the Oklahoma Arts Council as a performing and teaching artist on our roster for more than 20 years, leading residencies for all kinds of groups across the state. In addition to being an award-winning performing and teaching artist, Greyeagle is also a U.S. Army Vietnam-era veteran. And he believes firmly in the importance of arts to help veterans heal physically, mentally, and spiritually. He describes one of his most rewarding experiences delivering cedar flutes to troops in Afghanistan during a USO tour. Here are a few more images from Albert's class. Jason Poudrier was the one instructor who was hired to work at both pilot projects. Jason made the following observation in Lawton, quote, "In Norman, I used 2 sets of instructions, one for those with dementia and one without. Here I used just 1 set of instructions and found that staff and residents would make accommodations as needed. We were all able to work toward the same goals, even though some worked at a different pace," end quote. In Lawton, veterans are divided into 4 wings: red, yellow, blue, and green. The yellow wing is home to those residents living with dementia. Typically, Lawton Center arranges programs separately for residents of the yellow wing. However, for the creative writing class, they decided to combine the yellow wing with the other wings. The center staff reported that this decision helped to take some stigma away from the yellow wing residents, and now some of the guys in the other wings have developed friendships and will go to the yellow wing just to visit their friends, whereas this did not happen at all before. Our 3rd class was Visual Arts with Matt Hughes, an accomplished visual artist and director of the Leslie Powell Gallery in Lawton. One of the first projects he presented was bookmaking, which was very popular. Many of the residents used their books as photo albums or gave them as gifts to friends. The majority of the residents in Lawton and in Norman had very limited dexterity and motor skills, and the second project that Matt presented, charcoal drawing, was met with mixed success. A couple of the guys really enjoyed it, but many of them became frustrated. Matt came back on the 5th class with a process called pour painting that combined acrylic paint, industrial spray WD-40, and some simple tools to present a new process for the residents to make original artworks. This was a huge hit. As you can see, it doesn't require the same level of manipulation that holding a paintbrush or a charcoal stick does, and residents are still able to make lots of creative choices about which colors to select, where to put them, and how to tilt the canvas from side to side to make the image that they want to create. These were such a huge hit that Matt kept modifying this project a few other times throughout the residency, even creating a Christmas ornament decorating project using the same process. At the conclusion of the project, we convened a group to discuss the progress of the 2nd pilot year. Each of the 3 teaching artists attended, as well as several members of the Veteran Center staff who'd been involved in the project. We also had 3 members of ODVA Central staff in attendance. Attendees noted several particular takeaways that they felt were really salient. First of all, the helpfulness of the staff. In the Norman Center, there was a large volunteer corps, and in Lawton, there weren't as many volunteers, but the staff who was there were extremely helpful and very knowledgeable about the day-to-day lives of each of the residents. Second, the recreation director told us that the art class drew a great turnout from guys who don't usually participate in other kinds of programs or events that would come to the center. Third, having veterans as instructors was very helpful, and that was something that almost all the attendees remarked on. The center staff mentioned that the residents here have a high rate of PTSD diagnosis, and Albert Gray Eagle, our music instructor, shared with the residents his own PTSD diagnosis, and that made it a lot easier for him to build a rapport and to build some trust with the residents as his class went on. And last, another concept that came out of this wrap-up meeting was the idea of a legacy through artwork. Many residents here are in their 80s and 90s. One man shared that, quote, he wanted to leave something behind for his grandchildren to remember him by, end quote. And creating a piece of art, a work of creative writing, a flute, was something that he could leave for people to remember him by. And the instructors, whenever a resident would share something like that, were typically very honored to be able to help offer that to them. Some of the strengths of the Lawton project reflected what we saw in Norman, but some different lessons emerged from each center as well. After looking at both pilot years together, here are a few of the insights that seem to resonate with both centers. First, solicit input from veterans as often as possible, not just before the project, but during, after each class was complete, and also work with the center staff to help organize some focus groups of veterans and their families. Second, engage veterans as teachers and as artists. We kind of lucked into finding Jason Poudrier, who taught our creative writing class, but Albert was already on our roster. Being able to have military veterans as teaching artists added a deeper connection for a lot of the residents. Third, involvement of family and caregivers. Focus groups that I mentioned helped with this, as did Jason's facilitated creative writing process. We're fortunate to have a number of public events. The arts really lend themselves to lots of different creative strategies for public engagement. 4, staff and volunteers. The culture at each of these centers was a little different, as I mentioned, and kind of learning how to work within that culture was a huge key to our success. Not everything worked equally well at both centers. Last but not least, we communicated often and built a strong relationship between the Oklahoma Arts Council and ODVA during these 2 pilot years. Now we have a solid foundation to build for future plans. Okay, now that we have completed 2 years of our pilot projects, our agency continues to take the lessons we've learned and translate them into some next steps. Currently, we're in the process of creating and publishing the 2nd anthology of creative writing by veterans. We also plan to build capacity in the field by holding regional training meetings for the arts sector to give them the tools to help plan successful residencies with military veterans. Additional ideas are an Arts and Military Summit to be held immediately preceding our annual Oklahoma Arts Conference in October of 2018. Longer-term plans include possibly developing some grant-making specific to arts and military programs. In the meantime, please stay tuned. You can keep up with our progress at our website. All in all, it's been an exciting couple of years and an exciting way for us to expand our reach across the state. Much of this still feels very new, but as we transition from direct programming to capacity building, we will continue to keep military veterans at the heart of our work, engaging them as arts leaders as we do. Please feel free to contact me. I look forward to hearing from any of you. Thanks.